and just turn it over to you both to share more about the work that you have done and answer any questions.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. I just want to let you all know I'm not able to turn my camera on for some reason, but I'm here. And so I just want to share a little more context, and then also thank my colleague Heather Ritchie, who's also in the room. We were thinking about what's the most valuable to our varied field, right? As a public charter school in the District of Columbia, we are well resourced. And we also do have a lot of guidance given to us. And so we, are happy to engage with what our process is currently looking like, and, particular challenges for us. I would also feel like I could have mentioned earlier is that we need to make decisions quickly, but yet we are just not clear yet on our level of authority on things like a fully virtual model. That's been told to us that we would have to go through a whole process to do an amendment to our charter contract if we want to have a virtual model in 22-23. But as we look at 21-22, they've said no to compulsory age students and just haven't given us enough information. And that's really tricky because we were a bit surprised to see that that was the #1 interest area for next year. And the other thing that I don't know if I fully shared is that I talked about how hard it is for us to deliver assessments. We are seeing gains in programs that are taking certifications, and we are seeing gains in digital literacy across the board. But, we are not seeing enough participation to even figure out if we are on track for making gains as measured by NRS. And that matters a lot to our accountability framework. And so as we look to the future, we know that if someone is even in an all virtual program, if we can offer that, we have to have testing much more often, and it has to be in person. It's been a resource strain that it's hard to even quantify. The amount of time it takes 3 students to take one CASAS test, and the amount of resources we put into that with tech support and teacher time is absolutely not sustainable. And I don't know if that's a pain point that sounds familiar to you all, but we feel frustrated that vendors are saying you can do things remotely, and we're saying, well, to at what cost and to what end? And that's really been reflected by our other adult peer schools, and their solution has been bring everybody in for testing. And we administered almost 300 remote tests this year, and it's just not even a school for our size, as resourced as we are in the staff that we have, we couldn't do it.
Go ahead, Jana. You still have a question.
Thank you guys for your presentation. So at our program, we have enough classes that we can offer, some online, some hybrid, some in person, and we have similar results to you. And we've seen how at the lowest levels, there's a stronger preference for in person, and as you go up levels, it skews more towards online, although there's a lot of people who want online. And what we're struggling with right now is, we've opened up a kind of a Pandora's box with that you can have online classes, but it's so much harder to get gains. Like, it's so much less effective in many ways, not always clearly, but like that. So the tension between quality education and what you can do in person and how you can guide folks in person versus students' desire for convenience, really, and how to balance that. Like, we need for you guys to be making gains, and there's a lot less that we can do online, but you all want to be at home for reasons of convenience, which are real. They're real. So I don't know if anybody has thoughts on that. And not wanting to be paternalistic, telling people what's best for them, but there are these competing needs.
I could jump in just real quick, or do you want to start, Karen?
I'll just mention one thing because I have forgotten to mention it. We did go through an exercise of saying what would be prerequisites to being in a virtual program, because it does feel absolutely like we're not going to tell you what's good for you or not. You're the master of your own destiny here, and you can vote with your feet and not stay with us. So it's like, I like how you said Pandora's box, because I think that puts words to the feelings that I have. And so we're trying to figure out what would be our rationale for saying no to the virtual. That's not just, well, you need to show gains on a test for our accountability framework. So I hear you and see you on that one. And I wonder what Heather would say, add to that, maybe to give more context to what I said as well, if I missed anything, Heather.
So I would say from a national level, I think many of us are reading kind of like what is the benefit of virtual education, and that it may not have the same learning gains as being in person. And I'm one of the professional development specialists at this school. And we acknowledge that it's a different learning style. It's a different learning timeline. I think what it really connects to when I've talked to people nationally about this is that in some areas, it's a I can go or not go situation. And like I'm in a rural area or I have children and commitments there, I cannot actually go in person. But I can participate virtually. And it's something that the adult ed field has been missing for years. It isn't. So I think that that's one aspect, is really thinking about how adult education can embrace this opportunity, but also building the scaffolds and supports and having it not be in person or like one or the other. It's like, how do we blend this all together and offer in person, offer hybrid, offer virtual? But I also know that that goes to capacity of organizations. So I fully acknowledge that as well. I just think it's one of the things that we should all really be thinking of as a field to figure out.
What we did to get post tests, my name is Mary Poplar I'm from New Orleans, YMCA Educational Services. And so what we did to get post tests or to people into post tests was we would give them the option of making an appointment on a day and time that was convenient for them. And that really seemed to help, because then they could pick a day and time that, okay, because it wasn't an option. It was, you have to come in and take this post test. And we're in a library. And so the library has been closed. We haven't been able to have in-person classes. And so that was the only way we could bring people in anyway, was by appointment only. So that's kind of what has worked for us. It seems like since they have and we use something called Calendly to have them make the appointments. And it seems like that's what's helped, because we tell them we need them to come in to take a post test. Now here, you use this to make, to come in, to make an appointment at your convenience, but you have to come in kind of thing.
I noticed in the chat, Christy said, with Schoology, have you thought about how you will use classes for different program models? We have Schoology as well, and we will have hybrid, in-person, and online only. And we need to decide whether all students are in the same class, regardless of program model, or whether they should be in different sections, classes in Schoology. So the way we use Schoology right now is that it matches what we have in our student information system. And so you're enrolled with a teacher, and then that's your class in Schoology. And so I don't know if we would do anything different in the future. So I imagine one teacher will be assigned to one group of students, and whether they come to the building every day, or whether they are in hybrid, or whether they are fully virtual, that's just the teacher with the group in Schoology. So if you were to go into our school in Schoology, we have 99 classes. So there are 99 classes within Schoology, and it's one teacher per group of students. And if you are full-time with us, you have 2 different classes inside of Schoology. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, because I honestly haven't thought about that question before. So I'm glad that it was raised.
Yeah, that's what we did this year. And yeah, it's just next year, because this year we only had one class that was hybrid. Our CNA class, and everything else was online only. So going forward to next year, we're kind of still figuring out what our program will look like in the system and how it can work for us and also work for students.
I have curiosity for you, Christy. How are you having students select which model they'll tap into?
Oh, so Oh, so the principals set that up, so I don't really know. I think it's more of an opt-in thing, but I do think they have to have a certain digital literacy skill in order to get the online only or the hybrid, because there are some students who want to opt in, but when they start the classes, they realize it's not for them. So I think there are some screening techniques, but I'm not really sure what they are.
With our new student enrollment, we did remote placement testing using Calendly. And one thing I can say about that, that was revelatory in and of itself. If you're coming in for an English level and you need to navigate using Calendly to set up an appointment. So we're trying to figure out ways to glean information. So we ask fewer questions on the front end, but that's a helpful external benchmark for us because it almost feels like taking something that someone said they wanted to be like, no, sorry, you didn't demonstrate this, so you have to come all in person, or trying to figure out what we're not going to offer is a pain point because I feel like it's limiting. And it's also, we have seen our teachers really advocating for virtual, and that is something we do wonder about as well. Like if that's one of the reasons why the data looked the way it did. I got several unsolicited proposals from our teachers because there's so much positive energy and innovation here. And it's really incredible. We want to keep it. And so that is just a curiosity. If I wonder if anybody else, do you know your models and how people can, what people need to demonstrate to qualify for your model?
I guess that was what worked for us, because we also sent out a link to fill out an enrollment form. So if they could do all that, then that worked. And that the few people that couldn't, then we would make the appointment with them ourselves and have them come in and or if, because we work with students from 0 level all the way up to high set level. And so if they couldn't do that, we would explain that they would have to come in person to do everything for us to help them and to give the test and that kind of stuff. And we just didn't have that many people, because when we told them that it was online, we didn't have in-person classes. Well, then they'd opt to wait until we could have in-person classes if they couldn't come in. I mean, if they couldn't even fill out the form that we sent, click on the link, fill out the form, it's a Google form, and the enrollment form, and then make an appointment. So, because we would send a detailed email that explained how to use the Calendly and how to make the appointment. And so we had very few that had a problem with it. And so I guess that kind of was and so going forward, that's what we're going to continue to do. But once we open in person, then we'll be able to have those people, when we're having in-person classes, then those that can't do it, then we know, by doing that, whether, already what level they might be, because if they can fill out a form and use Calendly, they have the skills to do that.
Do you want to go ahead, Jenna? I see you have your hand raised again. Feel free to unmute.
Yeah. Did I? Okay. The question of a screen or a prerequisite is interesting. Clearly this year we had everybody online, and we, the staff, are kind of looking at a hybrid. Our classes are only 2 days a week, so like 1 day in person, 1 day online, as a promising model for those folks who don't come with the ability to click a link, fill out a form, and schedule an appointment, because it allows for a lot of cycling and recycling, and we're going to learn the skill together with a teacher who can show you, and then we're going to go try it the next day, and then we're going to see where we failed and try it again. That's what I look like. I think that has a lot of promise, but not a lot of our students chose that as one of their things that they were interested, like it didn't come out very high when we surveyed students. We did not ask that great follow-up question of like, if it was a hybrid class or if it was an in-person class, would you come? So we probably have to go back and ask that, but we're looking at hybrid for that, for those students who don't have the highest enough skills to go 100% online.
One thing that
I'm sorry, that's what we're planning on doing also going forward, is to do that hybrid where they come 2 days a week to class and then the other 2 days they do online. And that's what we do too, is we teach them to use those programs. And we have a program called iExcel that is pretty simple. And even our lowest students, once we taught them how to use it, they were able to use it. And so usually we help them load it on their phone because they can do it on their phone, and we help load the programs on their phone, and we help them go through all of that. But that's what we're planning on doing going forward also, is to do 2 days in classes and then 2 days online.
a planning paradigm for us is around attendance. So as a public school, even though it's non-compulsory, part of how we are evaluated is on our students' attendance. It needs to be above 69%. Really, it needs to be closer to 75%. Of course, we know there's a correlation, right, between student success and attendance, and our classes are supposed to be occurring for 12 hours a week. And so trying to land on how much of that needs to be synchronous versus asynchronous is not been agreed to internally, let alone externally. I was wondering if anyone has any like ratio or number of hours they could share. I was going through this exercise yesterday with a couple of colleagues, and we were saying that, well, if you're hybrid or if you're virtual or if you're in person, if you've got 12 hours a week, we're thinking that 8 of those hours need to be synchronous and 4 need to be asynchronous. Does anyone have any ratios or any kind of framing like that that they're thinking about?
This year we did 2/3, 1/3. And then as the year went by, teachers found it was actually harder and less effective to give the asynchronous, and so they moved to 100% synchronous, but that's all online.
Yeah, that's what we've been wrestling with, because we don't feel like that's the best practice, but yet our attendance is much lower on a day where we don't meet. And that we do know that for the people who use things like office hours and conferencing, if you work, it works. But if you don't, then like it's like a learning loss magnifier right there.
Karen, I do want to raise the reminder for us, because we always track by our attendance data, which has to be done by day. But we also have seen that students access the asynchronous work on the weekends and at different times than assigned. So we are seeing traction with asynchronous work. And the piece that we've really talked to teachers about is in the Zoom setting, there's a lot of teacher talk time. I think it tends to make us want to present more versus dialogue more, unless you're in breakouts and unless you have clear structures for your classes. And so we did encourage them to do asynchronous and synchronous, because we wanted the students to really engage in the activities. But I don't know if other people had the same experience.
I can get my students to participate, and so it doesn't become too much teacher talk. One thing I wanted to mention just came up for me today is, before the pandemic, I asked my students to bring in their devices, unbeknownst to me, they would need them. And one lady, she brought it in. Then she said, "Oh, I'll bring it back the next day." "Oh, no, you keep it, teacher." "No, I'll take it." Da-da. And if she would have let me keep it, and if she would have come back the next day with it, she would be in class. She has not come to class the entire pandemic. And we didn't lose that many. Even and I teach the high, well, one of my classes is the high level classes, the HSE level classes. And I didn't lose that many students, but she's an older person who just couldn't get to do it.
Karen, this is Lionel. For some reason I can't turn my video on. They won't allow me to turn it back on, so I don't want anyone to see my mug. I'm curious of the group here. Oh, someone just gave me the right to do so. They heard me.
Sorry about that. That was
That's
me.
okay.
I don't know why. I don't know why you and Karen weren't able
You
to.
didn't
turn
want
on
to
your
see
video.
this. I'm curious. Do you all have an idea about whether there was any shift in your students because of the pandemic? Did you get a different set of students, or at least a partially different set of students, because classes were all, for those of you where classes were all offered online versus the students you were getting? And that's one of the things in the back of my mind. Are we going to get a different set of students if we go back, when we go back, versus what we have now? Yeah, and I think about that in terms of, they're adult students, and adult students have responsibilities, and they shift as those responsibilities shift. And that's what this pandemic allowed in one manner, for those responsibilities to be at home with kids, et cetera.
I'll add just from some experience that I've seen with our partners, both domestically and internationally. I think one group that is most impacted among many is groups that have special needs or physical impairments, and that might prevent them from being able to fully participate with the different technology tools. I know that that there's a lot of tools out there that have accessibility affordances, but still there are challenges with some of the open education content that programs are using, which puts undue pressure on the teacher to figure out is this meeting the needs of this particular learner? What do I need to do to adapt this to make sure that it's going to be inclusive and enable them to meaningfully participate? So that would be one thing that I've seen across programs.
Thank you. Thank you. Just curious.
And anyone else? Yeah, that's just from my experience. I'd love to hear what others are seeing.
We've served, I think most of our students continued. We clearly lost a bunch. And we're trying to take that into account. We know that our surveys was similar to yours, and there was a strong preference for online, but we were not able to survey all the students who dropped because we went online. So we are committed to offering in-person options for all those students who were not able to persist. We lost some older students who wouldn't be able to see a phone, and who didn't feel up to learning a Chromebook, and didn't have anybody to help them in their house with a Chromebook. But I think our population has been stable. We do have mothers who, with kids with special needs, who would previously not be able to even think about going to a class. Of course, they're also had been dealing with having kids at home and having to manage their schooling. So that was still not working out, but potentially we have more people who can attend, for what one of you said, Karen.
I think our population has been pretty stable, but one thing that we usually have about 60% students returning the next year, and that was true from last year to this year back in online, and we are completely remote this year. But for the new students, one thing that I have noticed is that the new students we're getting are tend to have higher education levels than we've had in the past, and are higher level. So when we've been in person, our level 1 wait list is always the longest, and we get the most level 1 students coming in and saying we need English classes. And that has totally flipped now that we've been remote, and it's the advanced students who are the ones who are finding us and really wanting classes. And I think that the level 1 beginner students are just not able to find us anymore online. And so they're getting left out. So that is one thing that we've noticed in terms of who we're actually serving for the students who were not our previous students, but who are coming to us new this year.
Makes you wonder if there's like a advantage of having a model where the beginner entry level students are put in hybrid or face-to-face classes, so that they have the experience of being able to work one-on-one in person with an instructor, onboarding them to the different technology tools that the school is using, and then having the students that have the higher levels kind of moving more towards those fully remote virtual models.
Yeah, that's something we're looking at, is more remote as the levels get higher.
Yeah, that's our plan. The literacy classes are going to be all in person. And then level 1 and level 2, there's like a PM online, and an AM all in person, and the remaining classes are going to be hybrid probably. And then as we move up, starting at about level 3, the preference for online really got strong.
So we have about just a minute or so left. Is there anything else that we want to cover in this breakout discussion that we haven't yet already, or any final takeaways that we want to share?
Sorry, I can't see everybody, so if I'm talking too much.
No, go ahead.
Mute me.
Go ahead.
So we have been, somebody put something in the chat about like an optional in-person something, and we want that, but we can't exactly imagine a model besides something volunteer run that wouldn't take away from, do you want to bring in the whole class? It's optional. It really sucks to teach some people in person, some people online. I've tried it. It's terrible. Like, how do you structure something where some people can come in for an in-person something with their teacher without overburdening the teacher or taking away contact hours from the rest of the folks, and without like paying more money?
In my opinion, I think something that you could do, it depends on how you structure the class, but if you structure it where a portion of your class is online and then a portion of it is like an independent work or group work or something like that, the students would be able to access the online from their in-person classroom for the portion that's done virtually. And then you could have that activity either done independently for people who are doing something online completely. And then for the people who are in person, they can then do it together in groups. It wouldn't be a perfect model, but it could at least get some students involved in person for the same lesson core.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Nancy. And maybe building some assessment around what it is they are watching from however how the instruction is delivered. That's unique for those people that are completing it all digitally. Great. Well, we are out of time, you guys. I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday. I just want to thank again the team from Carlos Rosario School for just sharing your awesome strategies and resources with us all. It has been super helpful, speaking for myself. And we'll be sending out all the recordings and resources, feel free to send the team questions directly, and look forward to seeing you all again on a future Friday. Thanks. Have a great Friday. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.